everyone. This is Glenda Dawson and LD. We're here on Glenda's Dragon's Den on the Conscious Awakening Network on Roku TV, Apple TV, and Amazon Fire TV. Tonight, we have a phenomenal person who I met a couple of years ago, and I am so blessed to have met her, her experiences, her life in general has been an inspiration to me, whether she knows it or not. Nicole Richmond is an attorney in Canada who her law firm basically integrates wellness with law to support the First Nation people of Ontario, Canada, basically. Nicole, welcome. How are you?
Thank you. Oh, Glenda, so nice to see you. Thank you for that introduction, and thanks so much for the invitation to be here. It's a real big honor, and it's cool to see this this platform. It's really going big time. So it's cool. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. Thank you.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah. So here we are. My name's Nicole Richmond, and I live on the north shore of Lake Superior in Canada. So I live in a city called Thunder Bay, and it's the traditional territory of my nation. So in Canada, we have several and many what we call indigenous nations. So my nation is the Anishinabe nation. You would also know us as the Ojibwe. And there are a series of different communities, the Potawatomi, the Chippewa, that are related from the same language family. And I grew up here in northwestern Ontario. And when I was thinking about what to do with my life, I went to talk to my uncle, who was the long-term chief, the leader of my First Nation. And my uncle had been in politics he was one of the longest serving chiefs. I think he was in there for at least, 25 years. So he had dedicated a big chunk of his life to doing leadership and moving our community forward in economic development and assertion of rights. In Canada, we have a regime where the government will recognize existing Aboriginal and treaty rights. So if rights haven't been extinguished by action of the government or through a treaty, or there's a process by which you can advance your rights. And so my First Nation has been arguing that they've never surrendered their land. So my uncle's had been working on this for a long time. He's no longer the chief. And so I went to talk to him and I said, hey, what do I do with my life? And he said, you should go to law school and you should fight for our people. And, in Canada, we have all of these long histories. We have a race-based legislation called the Indian Act that governs property rights, individual rights, matrimonial rights of Indian people by virtue of their being born into this particular bloodline. So it's a difficult history in Canada. And, up until the 1950s, we weren't even allowed to have lawyers. So we've come a long way. And so I went off to law school, and now I have my own business. I've been a lawyer for 15 years, I think, this year. So I'm 43, if anyone's wanting to do that math. I like to tell people my age because it's fun, right? Made it this far.
Yeah.
And so my practice really blends wellness and community, like rehabilitation. So I'm really studying on a personal level, my own personal healing, really interested in energy medicine, all the woo. I'm doing all the woo things. And then I'm thinking about what that means in terms of our own cultural processes or spiritual processes or governments, and then translating that back in to think about how can we extrapolate wellness from a personal perspective, things that I've learned or that our community values, and then sort of making systems that work for our nation. And then I do lots of public speaking and education, and I travel quite a bit. I do conferences, and I'm really focused in institution building. So things like child welfare, I do a lot of that. We call it child well-being, trying to stick it to a strength-based, trying to paraphrase into how can we work towards something rather than always constantly being responsive. I do a lot of work in education, and I do a lot of work in governance. So those are sort of the primary areas that I work in.
Mm.
So a really exciting practice. And then in the background, I'm, as you know, Glenda, like I've been doing all kinds of consciousness work. I'm identify as being Arcturian, so I have, my family who hangs out with me from time to time, and we do that kind of work. So I'm just trying to, my big job is to talk about things as neutrally as possible, just to warm people up to the idea. So it's like if Nicole is saying these things, could be true, right? So that's the platform that I come from. Could be possible, right?
Mm.
Just casually throw it into a conversation. By the way, I'm hanging out with my blue mom later when I'm meditating, and I got a blue daughter, and we're from different dimensional realities. For Indigenous people, that's not too far of a jump for them to grasp, because we grew up all the time like knowing about the beings. We call them the grandfathers and the grandmothers, so we understand this dimensional difference.
Mm-hmm.
And we have lots of teachings about the star people. The word Anishinabe means from whence original man was lowered. So if you break down the etiology of the word, that's what it means. So we understand that we came from somewhere, that we were lowered, that we have ancestors that are in other realities. And so I'm just trying to translate all of this and help create structures that make sense as our people move forward. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So in your practice, why were you lowered? Why were your people lowered? Because to me, up there, they got to have a good sense of humor. They got to be, what are these? What are they thinking?
I know.
So why do you feel we were lowered?
Well, we understand that the earth itself is alive and that the earth itself has a consciousness. And humans in our creation story were sent last. So we have, the earth that was created, and in our creation story, we have all of the animals. So in our story, we have a flood, very common to many creation stories.
Mm-hmm.
So after there was this great flood, the animals got together and they had a council, and the story was that they knew that there was earth underneath all of the water. And so to bring the earth up to create what we call Turtle Island. So the whole idea was that it's for the human experience of taking care of the earth, being a human. I think we all know it would be cool and fun to stay in these other dimensional realities where we're working in different ways. But I think I understand our responsibility to take care of the earth and to live in harmony with the animals and with the other nations that are here. I don't know the exact answer why I was specifically sent. I've had the dreams where I've been told you're going down, and it's gonna feel like a long time has passed, but it's just a little time. And they said people don't know that they're sleeping, but they're sleeping. And they also said it's not real, but it's going to look really real. And then I remember just getting to Earth and being like, wow, it's so real. Look, people are sleeping. They don't even know they're sleeping. And so I know a lot of people, like Anishinaabe people that are my friends, they'll tell me quietly, they're like, I remember my instructions, so people know that that we're here on purpose to be of service. And, and just to make one more point, I think as a nation, we were lowered, but I think as individuals, we also have particular mandates, responsibilities, right, to contribute to the whole. And I think sometimes I walk around, I was saying this to you guys earlier, but like I was walking around, I'm like, man, this place sucks. What am I doing here? Why do I have to be here? There's like the vibration that I carry is different. Like, I don't often find places where I'm like, yeah, this feels really good. Mm-hmm. I think that's like a chance to just be self-compassionate and to be compassionate for the humans. And like at this time when things are changing so much and where people are fed all of this misinformation about who they really are and what's really valuable about life, I think it's important to really stand our ground. It's been my motto this year, standing your ground.
And I can't think of a better motto. Now, in my understanding, society embraces you as the enemy because society wants us all to work for them and their goals, and not be self-focused, and not understand that we come from one and we are part of the one, and it's all connected, and so we have to be responsible. We can't just use resources without responsibility, and such and so forth. And you are taking this journey as a woman. So women, at least the dogma of the understanding of women and the legality of women through the ages was women were property. So, not only are you enlightened and aware of the oneness, and in this incredible community that understands, at least on some level,
Yeah.
that the people that are attempting to force feed them and everyone else don't really get it and don't want to get it. And then you're also a woman, and then you're educated. You're an intelligent, spiritual woman. And this is why I feel society is trying to limit the educational possibilities and the historical reference, so that there's really no way to go back and say, no, this is what's happened, really. And, before this happened, it wasn't like this. So do you understand where I'm coming from in my
Comment?
description of how society views someone like you? And are you in agreement with that? Has that been your experience?
Well, you know what? Yeah, that's one way to frame it. But I actually feel like, I was really lucky to whatever force helped me choose this incarnation was very supportive, because Indigenous people have been subject to genocide by the government, but for whatever reason, miraculously in this timeline, we've made it. We fought really hard for assertion of rights and sovereignty and recognition. And I spent the first part of my career as a lawyer, fighting with the government for recognition and saying, you need to, give these things to us, and you need to support us. And there are lawyers that are doing that work. But I'm like, I'm so tired of that. I want to empower a different framework of thinking, because my friend Latoya, she's my yoga teacher, and she and I present about, critical race, and we educate teachers about, working with Indigenous people and counterculture. And she said flat out to like this group of I think it was her class of, she's teaching students, she's teaching teachers how to become teachers. And she said, you guys don't know, but you're colonized too. Don't think it's just Indigenous people who are colonized. And so the way I look at it is Indigenous people represent something that's never been totally destroyed. It's a counterculture that is already, I would say, like the values are totally in the fifth dimension, working together, collaboration, community, love, truth, wisdom, humility, courage, truth, bravery. Those are our, and respect. Those are our 7 teachings. That's the system. So I think, we were attempted murder on a nation on purpose, because that's a threat to the hierarchy system that like feeds this, whatever the enemy is. And I really do believe there's an enemy, and I don't want to go into that tonight, but I do think it was done on purpose. And I think a lot of people are waking up to the fact that maybe society hasn't got it that great. Like maybe capitalism isn't exactly working out. And so what I just want to say to that is, I can play dumb, or I can just smile along, but I know so much better, and I can lay the punch when I need to, but I don't always need to. You know what I mean? It's about empowering other people to be able to do that. And because I'm supported so well by a community that shares my values and knows that I do this stuff publicly, they really are supportive of me. I feel like it's a really good time to be doing what I'm doing. I don't feel threatened by anyone or anything. Bring it on is how I feel. I feel that I'm very, very secure and very, very supported.
And I wasn't bringing that up to try and in any way make you fearful.
No, no, no,
Because
no. No, I
when,
didn't take that.
yeah,
I
when you
understand the
have that
narrative.
connection of the purpose and the support that you were brought here with, it's like, what are you going to do? Send me home? Hey, you got to
No,
talk to the people that sent me here.
I just understand the narrative. And if I would have been born maybe 20 or 30 years ago, my experience would have been totally different. I would have been more radicalized. I would have had to fight a lot more. It's just because people have fought before me, it's a lot safer for me to talk like this. I'm really lucky. I'm really, really blessed. I'm really, really supported. It's a very good time for me to be, doing this kind of work. And I'm very sensitive to everything that you're saying. I just say, like, stand your ground. Here I am on planet Earth in my traditional territory. My nation's been here for tens of thousands of years. We're not going anywhere.
And we try to follow a similar pathway because we work in the light. We try to bring people with that global understanding of oneness, of community, uh, to this platform to give them the opportunity to show what they're about and give other people who may still be asleep or suppressed by the dogma that's been beaten into them,
Yeah.
uh, the opportunity to see, a truth. And I don't know if you saw you probably didn't, but my teaser to this is the truth of our potential. That's how I teased tonight's show. And that's how I feel about you. You are an absolute glorious truth of what we as humans, or mostly human, are capable of.
Yeah, that's why I feel so excited. And I also feel I feel sometimes the way that my spiritual gifts get expressed force me to stay very, very grounded. Like some people have, you know, guides talking to them in every moment, and I sort of I don't laugh at it, but like it's not the way it happens for me. But I had this lady, one of my very first forays into this, and she told me about how she would go to the grocery store and she would have to muscle test to choose cheese, and I'm like, come on, get on with the show, lady. Like, take some of your personal sovereignty and your intuition and just choose the cheese. Like, I really feel like we can get so off in the clouds about this stuff, but I feel like I'm pretty grounded, and I feel like my community is pretty grounded, and we're very practical. And I feel because of the urgency of the issues that face our communities, we have to stay really focused on clean drinking water, suicide prevention, diabetes, like the challenges that are facing not most, but disproportionately facing people in the Indigenous communities. They require us to be on the ground. And so I feel, I just feel grateful for this expression, or the way that my life is going, because I really value being of service in the way that I'm being of service.
So 15 years into it, what does your uncle say?
Oh, he's really proud. He loves it. He loves it because when I was young, when I was following him around and I was in law school, and he would bring me to conferences and chiefs meetings, and he was driving me around and we would be on the road. I think about this story all the time. And he would, because he was happy to have an audience with someone who understood what he was doing with all of his, time. And he had dedicated so much of his life to this. So he'd start driving really fast, telling me all these stories about all the, government people that had done stupid shit, right? And he'd drive really fast and he'd go, those bastards. And then he'd realize he was like going way too fast on a dirt road, and then he'd slow down, and then he'd get really animated again. I think he's really proud. He unfortunately is now suffering from Alzheimer's, so he's not but I mean, he's been a huge influence on a lot of people, and he's done a lot of really good work.
Well, a little bit of my experience, Alzheimer's presents in the third dimension rather remarkably. In the higher dimensions, there is still a tremendous understanding and a tremendous ability to get that spiritual communication.
Oh,
So,
fascinating.
so you might want to, at some point, if you choose to look into that, and you might be able to reconnect on that higher level. Because
Yeah.
that's been my experience with a lot of people that have cerebral atrophy, Alzheimer's, and similar aging challenges.
I had no idea. My family, my mother's also starting to, she doesn't know her age, and she calls me crying, and she's really confused, and I have to write things out for her. And it's really a test of compassion and just to like understand the human body. It breaks down, right? My naturopath talks about it in a way like where she talks about just cells just can't recover themselves in the same way. And we're very focused in the physical, in the third dimension, in these bodies. We have a lot of pollutants, like energetic pollutants and just the food that we're eating. And I'm trying to improve what I ingest to take better care of this body, but that's a big process.
Well, quick story. When my mother was in her 70s, she used to volunteer in a hospital, uh, bringing water for people that need water or a book or whatever. And then she reached a point where she was really incapable of doing that. And on her 75th birthday, we had a talk. And I said, "What's going on, Mom?" And she said, "I'm useless." I said, "Really?" I said, "What did you do a couple of years ago when you were?" And she said, I would bring them water. It wasn't much, but it made me feel special to be able to bring them some comfort. I said, "Well, the way life works is this is now your opportunity to give that to someone else."
Mhm.
So
You mean the opportunity to be cared for?
Right.
exactly.
Aw.
To care for. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's fascinating. It's I've been really independent my whole life, and just through circumstances and childhood stuff, and my personality is very much like I'm going to take care of everything, right? And so for me, one thing I need to learn is how to receive and how to, say I
Well,
need a
she's
little
trying to show you
comfort.
that. She's still teaching you.
Yeah, 100%. 100%.
So, that may bring you a little comfort. And, I was fortunate that I caught her in time to go through that and give her a little peace. But even in her late 70s, and she died just about when she was 80,
Oh, wow.
she still intuited a nephew of hers rather, who was in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean and needed support.
Mhm.
Who she hadn't spoken to in years, and he and I coordinated date and time, and she barely recognized me for me. She thought I was my father. If that's it.
Aw.
So the ability that they have to function on 5D. Yeah, and she isn't my only experience, because I served as vice chair of resource development for Mahaney's, which is the coordinating body in New York State for all the regional MHAs. And I've run into a number of consumers of mental health services who have had similar experience.
It makes sense to me because, it's the whole out of body idea where people are released out of their body and they have like, oh, wow, look at me. I'm like perfectly aware of everything, right? So I think, that makes sense to me. That's a really good way to think about it.
And we get caught up in feeling badly for who they were and are not anymore, without the understanding of, but they are now becoming the immortal and the eternal.
Yeah.
As that's happening. Some transition very quickly, and some, not as quickly, but the destination is still happening.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was watching a movie and it was an Australian movie. I can't really remember. And they had created this, I'm talking about things that I don't know about here, but I just want to tell
That's
you
okay.
about the movie.
Please.
They had created software in this movie where they could travel in their minds into different realities, but really the objective was the girl had a brother who was in a coma, and
Mhm.
she wanted to wake him up out of his coma. But anyway, this in the movie, the premise was they put her to sleep for like 3 minutes, but in her consciousness in this software, she was lived a whole year. And it was interesting to me because what they were trying to imply was that maybe this brother who was brain dead or in a coma was in this like loop of time. But I don't feel that that's accurate. I don't feel that they would do that to us to make us suffer or to live infinite in suffering if you know, if your body, what I understand from, you know, like Dolores Cannon, or when I was studying a lot of this like out of body stuff or life between lives, was that your spirit sits very patiently with the body while the body is injured, but it's not experiencing time in the same way.
Well, time is a man-made construct. So, and I'm not sure where the suffering comes into play. You saw the movie, I didn't. But again, suffering is very much a 3D, that a spirit that hasn't resolved trauma in 3D may then impress upon itself to continue living it if someone doesn't help them to release that trauma. But I don't know that's what happens in a coma.
I don't know either. I just think
Yeah.
I just think about when I was given my instructions to come here and they said you're going to feel like a lot of time has passed, but when you get back it will be just like no time at all. And so I find that interesting. So like this construct, this reality and the coma reality, or you know, if something happens to the body, I think the spirit is so much wiser and the experience is so much richer. So this perception of suffering, if that's, you know, if that's the analogy that we could draw of like being a human, you know, I'm going to be here for 80 years and some of those 80 years are not so fun, you know, the things that we go through in the 3D reality and like the lessons that we experience or things that we transmute for ourselves or for others are difficult. But I think when we go back, we'll just be like, hey, what's up, everybody? I'm gone. Yeah, I was been gone for 5 minutes, and here I am again. So it's really interesting. I do have knowledge, or I have seen visions of in a different dimensional reality where I have my blue body. I believe it to be Arcturian. I don't really know for sure. You know, who knows
Are
anything
you
for sure?
asking?
No, I'm just
Okay.
saying. I'm just saying what I believe.
All
But
right.
the body is being held in a stasis chamber, and I have visions of like my little daughter, my little blue daughter, going to visit her mom. But I also feel somehow mom wakes up in that reality too and is able to interact, but not always sleeping. So this whole avatar idea is very, I think it's based on some technology somewhere. So I, based on my own, you know, meditations or visions or ideas about what I've seen in my alternate realities. So I just find it interesting, this idea of like what's real and the experience and where we focus our consciousness and how that sort of shows up in our experience.
Right. And to go back to the coma part, you do not feel any trauma or any,
Hmm.
from what my understanding is, from what I've read and from the people that I've spoken to, plus my own,
How many times you been dead so far?
so my own knowledge, you don't feel any pain. You're
Mm,
just hanging out until the body, the actual physical body says, okay, I'm healed enough to come back. Uh,
right.
and at that point, you could, you know, people don't understand. You can still hear everything.
Hmm.
You still know what's going on, and you're taking into account, just like, you know, you're writing down, okay, they came at 3 o'clock to give me water, and Aunt Sue came and talked to me for a little bit, but when they come back to 3D fully awake, they will remember the good moments, and they will remember who came in, who didn't come in. They would feel, they would have knowledge of the actual feeling of love, of being cared for, of being acknowledged.
Hmm.
And that energy and those moments are what will convince the body to come back.
Ah,
So, which
And
is very interesting.
I was fortunate enough to have interaction with Christopher and Dana Reeve. And one of the things that has been helpful is the understanding that this lifetime is just a drop in the ocean of eternity.
Yeah.
And the spirit is eternal. So yes, time is a man-made construct, and we are creatures of habit and creatures of perception, and very limited perception at that.
Right.
So, that's why traveling to a place can seem longer than coming home from a place. It's all just a matter of, how we're focused and how much we are in that moment and what power we put to it.
Oh yeah, and the other thing I find interesting is like the more you do your personal development work and you clear your trauma and you address your anger, then the 3D reality and these conceptions of cause and effect and the materiality fade away a little bit, right? And things can go
Right.
wonky, and what you think is real is not actually real. Like one time I went through this whole Mandela effect problem where, man, I went to this conference and it was in Detroit. It was with this group called Awake and Empowered Expo.
Mhm.
And Caroline Corey, you will have heard of her, was there. And Michaela Sheldon is this excellent channel. And this guy named Ethan Fox was doing all of this spiritual work. And because I had done so much work so quickly in such a short period of time, when I came back, I was like, so I had shifted too many timelines and it took a while for me to catch up. And I remember that was such a crazy time in my life where I was like looking through history, looking at maps, my
Mhm.
ideas of colors had changed. There were all sorts of new animals, all sorts of new like versions of things, animals in completely different colors that I didn't know about, new countries, the way the maps that I remembered, they weren't the same anymore. And for me, that was such a big lesson in like, it's not as real as you think it is, right? Like, and when your vibration changes, and so I remember calling Michaela Sheldon and being like, look, I'm in a bad place. I am in a bad, and because I think my energy was shifting so much during that time, like one thing would be one way and then it would go back and then it would go this way and then it would go back, and that flip-flopping happened for like a week and it was really spooky. Then everything settled and I got grounded, and like she just said, you just got to get yourself grounded. She said what you remember you thought was true, she said that's not true anymore. You just have to get used to the new place. And I was really happy because the main things, in my life, my clients,
Mhm.
my family, facts that I were really like intrinsic to my reality didn't change, but there was a lot that changed. And so it took a long time. And I realized, I was like, Nicole, this is how people end up in the psych ward, right? Because they lose their grip on reality, and the reality that they were so attached to doesn't exist anymore. And that can be really unsettling, right? And so for me, that's the big lesson, is like a lot of our perceptual reality has to do with our state of consciousness and the level of clarity that we have in our lives. And now I'm sort of used to it more. I'm used to things just flipping in and out, or things materializing, or things that shouldn't follow normal physical reality rules just happening. And I think all sort of people that are on this path just sort of get used to it.
Mhm.
But when I first went through it, it was pretty unsettling. And then my husband was like, Nick, stop talking. So I went to my friend's house and I showed them the globe, and they're like, it's always been this way. And I was like, oh no, oh no, oh no. And then that's why I was like, I can't tell this to anybody because they're gonna think I'm crazy. But it was really funny. It was really funny to go through.
So, Nicole, we have a common mentor, Glenda and myself. She's a Swami. Her name is Nityamuktananda Saraswati. And she might look at your statement and say, well, but it's only as real as you think it is, as
That's
opposed to it's not as real as you think it is, which was how you framed it.
right.
Yeah, I don't, I'm not a philosopher. I don't understand all of these things. I was just telling you what my experience was. And like, whether it's my perception of reality or the Earth's perception of reality, or I jump timelines, I don't totally know what happened, except to say that reality is totally
Subjective.
subjective. Exactly.
And every single time you do something to heal, you awaken more. And with every level of awakening, because we just don't awaken, that's it. It's a process, and you continue awakening. And the more you awaken, the more you see things differently. It
Yeah.
could be one time you could see a beautiful rose bush outside your home, and you're like, oh, nice, it's got buds in it. You go inside, you read something, it really gives you inspirational energy. You walk out, and then there's the flowers are all open, and you're like, wait, I was only in there like half an hour.
Yeah.
So it's when we continue growing and healing and continue awakening, we proceed to higher levels of consciousness and higher levels of acknowledgement.
Hmm.
You know,
I think it's a great point. And I think, sometimes if you're a public like me, like I've got talks on YouTube from a few years ago, and I'm like, ooh, don't really think that's true anymore, and like I think one of our teachings in the Anishinaabe way is like Debwe, it's like the truth is relative to like your experience right now. And
Mhm,
as my level of consciousness grows, or even my level of self-compassion, like things that I had judged maybe about myself, or things that I believed were true,
mhm,
or even things that I'm able to feel now that I wasn't able to feel before. It's an evolution, and I think it's really interesting. And I look at consciousness, like Michaela Sheldon talks about this. She's really excellent. She talks about consciousness like an elevator. And
mhm,
when you're on the low ground, you just, all you can see is the buildings. But as you go higher, you can kind of see the bigger picture of
mhm.
things, and you can sort of understand the bigger patterns. And I have a lot of maybe self-compassion for my earlier understandings. It's always growing and evolving.
Yes.
Well, as you expand your awareness expands. So that globe that you focused on specific things with, you expanded your awareness and you became aware of other things that you weren't necessarily focusing on.
Yeah.
Mhm,
Because how could you, right? And this is where I think like some people, for example, who are living in trauma, or who have like root chakra issues, like they don't have access to clean water, or they don't have access to housing, or you know they're kept in states of lack. And how could they grow their awareness from states like that? And I think that's what has been done to indigenous people deliberately. Let's blow out the lower three chakras, because these people have advanced awareness, they have advanced knowledge, they have advanced connection. So let's just blow out security, safety, family, let's steal their children from them, right? Like
mhm.
that's what's been done. And so I think reconstruction at those levels are really necessary before you're going to move up into the higher state. So that makes a lot of sense to me.
And if you take that and impose Maslow's hierarchy of self-need pyramid,
Exactly.
then you absolutely knock out that foundation and no one can function on the higher levels.
Correct. I teach a
And
lot, right? So I teach, and my students love, they like when we get to these kind of conversations, everyone loves talking about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, because you need a roof over your head. You need to feel secure. You need to have secure attachments with family members, to grow up as a productive person in society, like you need to have all of this basic stuff. So it makes it hard when this is being done by policy deliberately to populations on purpose. It's
Mhm.
sad.
and
Yes.
there are certain countries, for instance, that are purposely arming all of its civilians to totally knock out those basic foundational needs because people are getting too woke for them.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's right. That is absolutely true. That's happening on purpose. I was listening to some podcasts today that were talking about this phenomenon and how, there is, I don't want to go too much into this, but like there is an us and there is a them, and there is, this whole Star Wars idea of like the good and the bad or whatever. I mean, like it's just light and dark, right? And we only
Right.
know light through dark and it's the duality dimension.
Mm-hmm.
But I strongly believe that human potential is so much bigger than what these social and economic and political constructs allow us to achieve.
Mm-hmm.
And diet and nutrition keep us sleeping, and politics keep us sleeping, and what they feed us in the media keeps us sleeping. And then when you wake up out of it, they call you crazy and they make you think that you've lost track of reality, or you become ostracized, or in some countries they kill you.
Mm-hmm.
I'm laughing because it's so crazy, and yet all of us, like, I don't know, souls, higher dimensional souls, like volunteer to come here and have this experience because it is so important. And I think because it's to the earlier point, I think Earth is very beautiful. I think one of my teachers, she says, Earth is on her way to becoming a star, and we're a part of that consciousness development as as we participate in our incarnations on this planet. And I think that's really beautiful. I really started to understand more about like my personal point of being on the planet. So we think about Earth serving us, but I started to think more about like, what if there's something necessary about this body that channels energy from different dimensions, through my crown,
Mm-hmm.
down through my body, and I spend so much time walking around in the forest. Like, what if there's something that I'm doing that's like a channel for the Earth and that's helping out in that way? And what if it's not about me? What if I'm here to serve the Earth somehow? And I started to think about it in a really different way. What if we're just here for the Earth, and that's consistent with the creation story that I shared about Earth, humans coming last. What if we're here for her? And I think about it in that way, less anthropocentric and more like the Earth is a beautiful place. We're so lucky. Look at your background on your beautiful screen. It's so phenomenal.
It is. It's beautiful.
And what if we are just nerve endings on the creator's tendril to connect all of that so that they can get that feedback and
Yes.
help bring what's needed to balance it. And as
I-
far as the us and the them, I frame it as the us are the ones who understand that we is us. We are all us. And the ones that don't understand, that's the them. The ones that think they are somehow separate from the us. So, it people try to make it really complicated, but it's really not that complicated. It's like when I was working with the New York State Legislature to try and craft legislation for mental health consumers, they wanted consumers to be able to sign off on ECT, on shock treatment.
Mm.
And I approached it first as an electrician, and I said, you can't control where those electrons go if you knew what brain cells needed to die. I said, and on a mental health level, if you are that desperate and so in need of some kind of treatment that would benefit you, you're in no condition to sign off on it. So
Yeah.
go sell that to someone who's stupid enough to try and pocket money for it. But
Yeah.
nevertheless, they persist.
I think about the point about the tendrils though as being really fascinating, and I've never heard it that way, but I like that. And I'm always I did a lot of work. I have a group. I'm not really as closely connected with them now, but with a group of walk-ins, and we met like once a week for like 2 years, and we explored so many things. And I would always be conscious, especially when this group was together. It was like this awareness of us being watched on a screen, like it was like the virtual reality. And I think about the construct of this body You know, I went through a period of my life, especially this summer, where I grieved a lot and I was really sad, and I really, really felt strong emotions. So I had to be present with the emotions to feel them, because I knew it was releasing. I knew there was childhood stuff, you know, I knew there was grief passing through me, but I was also like aware of the fact that I could feel. And I was like, oh my God, look at me crying. It's so adorable. You know, like, look at this human having all these sad emotions. And, you know, sometimes like I don't have anger very much, but sometimes I'll be in my car and someone will cut me off and I'll be like, you friggin' bastard, you know, like my uncle driving me, right? You bastard. And then I'll like instantly be aware. I'm like, Nicole's being angry right now. Like, isn't that cute? You know, like this human experience of like eating luscious food and, you know, inhaling the forest air. And I love going to the gym. I love lifting weights. I love the feeling of like being strong in my body. And I think it's miraculous, like the way that this human body is constructed and the way that we can have all these sensory experiences is really incredible. It's fun. And I think about, you know, if it's true, you know, I'm always like, I don't know what's true anymore, you know, like what's real anymore. But like, if it's true that where we come from, we don't have these lower emotions like sadness or grief or trauma, like what a miracle to like be able to experience these things here. There must be a reason. And one of my teachers, she talks about Mary Magdalene, and she talks about how when Mary was doing all of this healing for the collective, she would have to deliver the healing through her body. And she would experience so much body pain that would appear in her body. So as she was like, so I think about it like when I'm healing for my Indigenous community, sometimes it shows up as like empathetic pain in my body, you know, in my hips or in, you know, my neck. And we just have to feel that it's part of the human experience. And like whoever constructed these bodies to be able to feel and see and smell, you know, it takes so much, I don't know, what's the word I'm thinking about? Like it's so precise to be able to have all of these experiences and to have all of these senses. Like it's incredible. This human avatar is incredible. This experience is incredible. I really love it, even when I feel like I'm suffering.
Well, literally, for the soul to evolve, there has to be some skin in the game.
Skin in the game. Your meat suit.
There you go.
Yes.
And literally, you have to have cause and effect. You have to have some risk, or what's the point in taking that striving chance and having to deal with the consequences? That to me is the reason we're in this 3D plane, because, you know, there's no way to evolve if there's no risk.
Yeah, you're right. And, you know, I just want to say, like, also things go really sideways for people. Some people, they make the wrong decision over and over and over, and they are greedy and they consume everything and they prioritize themselves, you know, like I just think about like to manage this meat suit it's hard. It's really, it's not easy, you know. I think about every single chance that we get to make a decision to help ourselves evolve. Like sometimes it's easier to just lay on the couch and eat chips. I like doing that too, you know. I'm not always like making good choices.
Well, you know.
But then again, you have that hierarchy, and you understand that, you know, sometimes you want to try and experience that, and most times you want to do better. But getting back to your being cut off, I process that as, wow, you must be really disempowered if that's all you got, pal.
I'm different.
Well, you're a Jersey girl.
I usually give them the middle finger. It's that moment. At that very moment, it's like, you know, you could have caused an accident without any need. You know, there's no need for it. Especially those that go from behind you, go to the other side, and go in front of you to get off on the exit. I'm like,
but that's all they've got. That they have to have that victory, or
that's right. This is the exact point. So before we came on, I was telling you about my weird yoga experience with my yoga teacher. And as soon as I ran into her, I was like, okay, she's in her big moment, right? She's my yoga teacher. She's in Bali, Indonesia.
Right.
This is her big moment. And she's like trying so hard to like assert control and, like show up.
Right.
And I was like, well, go ahead. If that's how it needs, if that's how it shows up for you. I really like, that's also the compassion piece is like, I feel like I'm really in a chance where I like have so many opportunities and I'm so supported. But for a lot of people, they're really grasping for something to give themselves meaning or some way to express their power. If that's by cutting someone off or by being a weird yoga instructor and making people feel shitty about themselves, I think it's also the hierarchy, right? It's also
Right.
people grasping for meaning, and Earth is hard. Earth is a hard place, and some people really like have suffered a lot of trauma, and it's hard to get over that. It's really, really hard to get over that, and that's where it shows up in people behaving badly towards one another because that's what they got, right?
They have that moment. That's it.
They have
And,
that moment.
or they
Yeah.
feel like they have that moment only. Because in reality, they probably have a lot more than that if they would just surrender and look around. She got there through many different things. So it wasn't just that got her there. It wasn't just yoga in one moment. It was her journey that got her there. And if she would take time to examine her journey, she would see that she's not so disempowered.
Yeah.
But nevertheless, that's her belief and that's
Right.
her reality, and that's
Yeah.
what she lives. And if we view our incarnation as the opportunity to appropriately, and I stress appropriately, embrace and facilitate opportunities for love, then this is a great time to be alive, because I've never seen so many people in need to facilitate and embrace opportunities for love.
Yeah. I think about that too. And I think, I think about my big lesson this summer was spiritual bypassing. And to always be looking out for like the lesson and my personal growth, and always to be like, I understand it from the higher perspective, when really this body also needs to be respected, and this body also needs to say that person harmed you, and it's okay that you feel terrible about that, and it's okay that you have grief, and it's okay that you have anger, right? So I think for me, the lesson is to respect my humanity on top of having the bigger perspective, because I think we can really jump to the love and compassion without also honoring sometimes that we do get injured, So sometimes the like on the, car is okay, because I think some things that happen here are really tough too. We need to honor that.
Exactly.
But to honor it in the fact that the person that did that is the person primarily at fault, and the fault does not lie in you that it was done to. And unfortunately, there's a lot of dogma that tries to turn that around right now.
I know.
There's a
And
lot
I
of
think
codependency out there.
This is the lesson that we've been taught. So I teach a meditation. Well, I don't really teach it. I just facilitate it because everyone really makes important contributions. But this is one thing we've been talking about, is repeating patterns and things that show up as teachers for us. And, I've got, it doesn't really show up anymore, but I used to have like a woman who's my boss, and she tries to squash me because she's a little intimidated by me and she's insecure in her power. So, and one of my friends, Sarah, she said, Nicole, what do you think about the fact that this is a repeating pattern? And then I was like, what if it's not about me anymore? What if it's just, this is the quality of the humans right now because they believe in this reality where they feel disempowered, and they haven't been able to access the power that runs through them to appropriately channel that power for humanity and for the good of themselves, right? What if this is just an archetype that people participate in? And yeah, it sucks, but I'm not going to take it personally and say I attract this into my life and there's a big lesson here. What if it's just this is part of the chess game. This is like, these are one of the pieces in the chess game, and this is what I'm experiencing right now, and I'm not going to take it personally. You know what I mean about this whole, like, I attracted this for my learning. I'm so tired of that. I'm tired of that.
Yeah, I don't know that we attracted it for our learning, or we're just facilitating that piece of their learning.
Right.
And then
Right.
it's up to them to get it or not. We have about 5 minutes left.
Yeah.
What would you like to touch on that we haven't touched on? Do you wish to give out any contact information? Is there anything you want people to know going forward?
I'm just being told here to talk about my dog, George.
Okay.
Don't know why. My dog, George, had a car accident. He got really badly injured.
Well, who taught him to drive in the first place?
I know, Georgie. Georgie used to be an adventurer, and then he got hit by a car and he had to have his leg amputated. And Georgie was so scared of, he had all of this trauma in his body.
Right.
And he would always be scared. And I didn't really know what to do with him, because I was like, is it arthritis? He's too young for arthritis. But I have this worker. Her name is Lenny Dubay. I don't even think she takes clients. But I contacted her. I said, Lenny, what do I do about George? And Lenny talked to George in the astral and talked to George about what he was going through. I don't know why I'm having to say this out loud, but I'm just telling you the story. And George never suffered from his pain again. He's totally relieved. Maybe, I don't know why I'm saying this, except to say, there are so many other modalities for healing. As for me, I'm just kind of doing my little lawyer life here. I have a website that you can look at. I have some beadwork on there. I do lots of public speaking for my communities. I'm happy to speak, to you, Glenda, but I don't do a lot of public speaking as much. I don't take these like spiritual speaking options as much. I kind of just like to lay low on my couch, eating Doritos.
I need chips.
Watching Rihanna, at the Super Bowl. I didn't actually watch it, but I do like the human stuff. It's fun.
Yes.
You like thinking about watching it. Glenda's also an animal communicator, so I get,
maybe this is why.
Maybe, and we get exactly where you're coming from with that, and about how people need to embrace and be open to other modalities if what they're experiencing is not moving them forward.
Right.
And I think that's the big takeaway. I do have one question for you briefly, because you brought it up, and it's a buzzword that not all of our listeners may know. What does a walk-in mean to you?
A walk-in means someone who their soul got either upgraded through some agreement that they had. So they brought in, so I got an upgrade after I had a car accident. I got upgraded with more of my own soul, but some people have their soul actually walks out and another soul walks in from a different vibration. So sometimes people are having an experience and their soul goes, I just can't do this anymore. But the body is so important and the life is so important that another soul agrees to take on the contract of living that life. So some of my friends have gone through really disabling experiences where their soul has been upgraded so quickly that, like when I had that upgrade experience, they're integrating a totally new soul, and everything is new. One of my friends tells a story about how she went into her backyard and she was just looking at the dandelions and she was like, flowers. Like, it was like, I heard about this and here they are, like I'm having this experience. It was like totally starting over from scratch, kind of like meeting Joe Black. Have you ever seen that movie where he comes in and he's like eating peanut butters is like the most fascinating thing. So that's what a walk-in is. And that's the quick and dirty.
And so we have a similar understanding of what that is. I just wanted to,
clarify.
Well, I wanted to get what it meant to you.
Get it out.
Not assume that it means the same thing that it does to us. And sort of the more that some people hear it, the more people might understand that suicide is never the answer. There are a lot of ways, and if what you're doing is not working, find a better way that works.
Yeah. Suicide is something that I've been impacted by in my life, and it's been a really important teacher for me. And just in, sometimes when, so my husband died by suicide, and when he did die, the elders told me, they said, he didn't actually do that to himself, And I think sometimes our bodies can get overtaken by energies and by, being manipulated. And when you've really broken down your energetic layers, and you're not in control anymore, sometimes that is a vulnerability. But yeah, you should always, always, always be looking for support and be looking for help, because it's not very nice.
And
Not
it
very
is
nice for the
there.
people.
It is there if you look for it.
Right.
Yeah.
And there he is.
And there they are showing, hey, Nutmeg, be quiet.
All right. So I want to say thank you. We do have to go now. Thank you, Nicole. And I
Yeah,
want
thanks
to
for
let
having me.
everybody know that next week we have Mary Bassett, also known as Mama Mary. She's a channeler, a psychic medium, and she works with MUFON as a professional hypnotist. So I'd like to say thank you to everyone, and we love you. We send many blessings. Namaste.
Stay on, Nicole.
See you
Please.
next week.
Okay.